Parrot season! Wabbit season! Duck season! Fire!
Welcome to the Go Use Australia podcast. It's the podcast for Australian shooters who just want the political interference taken out of shooting.
Welcome to another episode of Gun News Australia, brought to you by Politics Reloaded and Gun Traders Australia. And I have again with me Danny Ryan from the Victorian Duck Hunters Association. How are you doing, Danny?
Good evening, Neil. How are you going? Good evening, listeners and watchers.
Okay. And a bit of a break from what has become a tradition of following WA news. We decided to cut across to Victoria for this year's duck season, which was announced recently. The announcement came seemingly a little bit late, but that's not unusual. We've seen that in previous years too. So, Danny, do you want to run through, I guess, what is available for this year's season, sort of when it starts, stop, opening times, that sort of thing?
So, first of all, yes, a record-breaking late announcement for the season, 14th of February. Obviously, there were some of us that had meetings with government prior to that, and we were sort of counting down the days and thinking what's the delay and what's going on. But we finally got there on February the 14th. We are told that the process will be cleaned up for the next year, and the government made some big promises this year in terms of locking in key points for the adaptive harvest model and things like that. So the next season announcement for 2026 should occur in 2025, hopefully by the second or third week of December, because that's when all the adaptive harvest model stuff is known and ready to launch. So, and the government's committed to working on making sure that occurs. But for this year, obviously, big news for the season this year is the 2025 season is a full-length season starting on the 19th of March and ending on the second Monday in June, half an hour after sunset. We have a 9-bird bag limit, which we'll talk about later in the adaptive harvest model outputs and things like that. We have a 8 a.m. start for the first 5 days, and critically, under the human safety regulation, we have an 11 a.m. start for all the anti-duck hunters out there to get onto the wetlands. So our time for hunting is put back, so then therefore their normal 10 a.m. time is also pushed back as well. So they're the key points. We have hard ed back in the game bag this year, which is a result of some very good work done by some people over the last couple of years, and there's been a long running process to make sure that happens. After the first 5 days of the season, should have mentioned it earlier, we now return to a normal everyday regulated, as per the game regs, half an hour before sunrise start and half an hour after sunset. So come the Monday after the Wednesday duck opening on the 19th, which we would make that Monday the 24th of March, we're back to normal half hour before sunset and half hour after sunrise duck hunting.
Excellent. And you held some information sessions recently. Do you just want to tell us sort of where they were held and how popular they were?
Absolutely. So Victorian Duck Hunters Association held 2 metropolitan duck information nights, and we've got another third one that we're currently looking at to try and get over the line in Gippsland. The first one we held at Frankston last week on Tuesday night was very well attended, and then we held a follow-up one in Sunshine. So on the Thursday night, which was even better attended than the Frankston gig, we always aim to have one in the east and one in the west. We did that quite well. We did have a little bit of a hiccup start. Some people may be aware that it made the press, and we were originally going to be at Oakley Grammar and also at the Salvation Army at Taylor's Lakes. And we just had a few little hiccups with that, with some anti-hunting groups putting a little bit of a curveball in with the principal at the school at Oakley Grammar and also the board that runs the Salvation Army venue. So we switched, and we were at Frankston Australia Gun Club, and our thanks to those guys down there in the east. And then we were at the Italia Club in Sunshine, which was a brilliant venue, and we'll be returning to both of those venues next year.
Yep. And I think for anybody who couldn't make the sessions, I mean, the information which you're getting here will obviously be, I guess, the critical stuff that you need to know. So no, that's really encouraging. It's a much longer season, as you said, from previous years, and nine bird bag limit, which is we haven't seen that for quite a while.
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing, Neil. So the press actually picked up, and some of the press I did in the weeks before our Duck Fever night and straight after the announcement of the season was that we've had an extended season and extended bag limits, and everyone seems to have forgotten, that pre-COVID and the previous set of game regs, 2012 to 2022, the bag limit was 10, and the normal length season was the third Saturday in March to the second Monday in June, and we've now got a new set of game regs which came in September last year, which now reflects and carries on those same basic principles from the first set of game regs. So our new game regs 24 to 2034 also have our game season but it on the third Wednesday of March and through to the second Monday of June, and also says a maximum bag limit of 10 birds per day. So we're back to just normal status quo, and it's good to see the government returning to what duck hunters with some sort of degree of knowledge and history would remember as a normal length season. So only in the last couple of years, heavily modified seasons, and particularly last year where we saw the government still trying to really battle with itself and work out where they want it to be with hunting. And now we know we're back to full length seasons and adaptive harvest models for bag limits, which is fantastic.
So where would shooters be able to find, I guess, more detail in terms of which wetlands are open, closed? Where would they go to get that information?
So if you go straight to the GMA website, that'll give all of the basic information for the season. The closures process, which is quite concerning at the moment, will take place in the course of the next 10 odd days. And the GMA is working with other agencies and working with the Outdoor Recreation Minister's Office as well. And they're trying to get all of the closure stuff done prior to Friday the 14th of March. So that will give hunters a good clear 5 days of knowledge of what's going to be closed and what's not going to be closed. There's also a new risk-based assessment process this year rather than just a carte blanche, well, there's brolgers there, so we'll close the wetland. So the risk, so a risk, let's use brolga for an example. So if you conducted a risk assessment on the possibilities of a brolga being shot, the possibilities and the risk is really low, given that a brolga is, a very, very large crane type bird, very long legs, 1.3 to 1.8 meter wingspan, perhaps bigger. Super huge bird, flies very slowly and cannot possibly be mistaken for a duck. And in cases of, in terms of hunting with brolga in the vicinity, brolga just walk away. So if you're walking into a wetland and there's brolga on the edge or brolga in the wetland, which is rare, you will just see the brolgas just walking away, and they'll sit 150, 200 meters away and watch you hunt all day.
Yeah, and you mentioned before we started, we were talking about, I guess, all things politics, that is Labor, Liberal, National Party, and you observe there's been quite a different approach to this issue by the current Victorian government. You sort of fill us in on that.
So no secret that Labor initiated, Victorian Labor initiated the game bird inquiry, so the select committee into native game bird hunting. Lizzie Blanthorne put that into the upper house, and then the select committee was formed, and as we know, we've spoken about that one, and the select committee came back with 8 recommendations. The first one to be ban duck hunting, a new Labor under a new Premier, under Premier Allen, sat down, had a look, considered their response. They adopted 7 of the 8 recommendations and didn't adopt the first one, which was to ban duck hunting. So Labor has now got a stance and always has had a stance of safe, sustainable and responsible hunting and supporting safe, sustainable, responsible hunting. So it's just interesting now that we've now got a minister who's in charge of both outdoor rec, which is where hunting sits in the Labor portfolio, and also environment. So in the past, we've had different ministers with different responsibilities in terms of duck hunting in Victoria and quail hunting in Victoria. So we've had agricultural and then environment. So it's sort of always required two ministers. Now the core responsibility sits with just one minister. So, and we've seen Labor adopt a very common sense approach. They did adopt 7 of the 8 recommendations. So there is some changes. There's been a lot of changes in the game regs. We've seen non-toxic shot now for quail. We've seen hunter education modules become compulsory, and in particular for this year for new hunters, you will be doing your WIT test online. You will be doing hunter education modules in the form of a quiz, which then allows you to progress on to the next step. All hunters will have to complete that process upon renewal of their game license the next time their game license is renewed. So a lot of changes in the background, all aimed at ensuring and making sure that the hunting is safe, sustainable, and responsible. And we have to play our part in that as well. So the offshoot is we've got some new things that we have to do to retain hunting moving forwards. Interestingly, obviously, the current opposition in Victoria, the Libs and the Nats, as the core party, is also very supportive of responsible hunting as well. Greens not so, AJP definitely not so, but we certainly, the Libs and the Nats and the Labor has bipartisan support for hunting in Victoria. And we should see a return to economic spend in regions. So I think the last good tab data came out of 2019 was $365 million in regional spend for hunting across the board. So I think that we've now got a responsible government that recognises that even though not everyone in the state might be keen on hunting, but there certainly is a large cohort of Victorians that are, and the government's supportive of that, which is great news for us going forward.
Yeah, the Labor is wanting to make sure that hunting is, hunting particularly is safe and sustainable and politically safe as well, because I think we all know that inquiry, the parliamentary inquiry, came as a result of nothing more than political pressure in the upper house, and obviously from others within the Labor ranks, because there's a lot of Labor MPs being sort of either urban who don't understand hunting and are pretty much left-leaning as opposed to their country colleagues. So it's quite interesting dynamics when you look at that.
It's a very interesting dynamic, and the feedback I get from most senior Labor politicians is that we just don't talk to them enough. We don't hammer them enough at their electoral level. We're not writing letters to them. We're not writing emails to politicians at their electoral level, not at state level, but your local MP. And the constant feedback I get is always the same. Oh, well, we get 25 letters telling us that duck hunting's bad, and we get 2 letters that tell us duck hunting's good. So, I realise that hunters are very isolationist, and that comes from a number of different reasons. It comes from being poorly perceived in the press and things like that. But we need to get out there and tell our story, Neil. And every Victorian duck hunter should be putting pen to paper or finger to keyboard, and we should be letting our local MPs know just exactly how important duck hunting and quail hunting is to you and your family, and hunting in general, because let's not forget that it's not just duck and quail hunting that's in the microscope. There's also deer hunting as well, and then we get on to the other subjects such as firearm ownership. So we're all in this together. So the more you can talk to your local MP and let them know that you support safe, sustainable, and responsible hunting, and also firearm ownership, then that's going to obviously shed the light for most, and even inner city politicians. The political side, in terms of risk for sitting government and dealing with the Greens in particular, it's I think that the government's made a very, very clear choice, and they quite well know after some consideration that that hunting in Victoria has a very strong following, and it's something that the government doesn't want to spend a lot of time on. It supports safe, sustainable, and responsible hunting, and let's get on with it.
Joining our YouTube channel entitles you to see our episodes before everyone else. Plus, we'll be running Friday night live streams from April just for our members. And by doing this, you'll also be supporting work we do that will enable us to get more and more important information out to the shooters on what's happening with the shooting sports. You raised some very interesting points about keeping it in the consciousness of your local MPs. And we tend to try to muster action when there's bad news. We tend to say, you need to get onto the. It's really too late because decisions have been made by then. So really, I think every firearm owner, but certainly if you're into duck hunting and watching this, drop an email to your local MP periodically, maybe once a year or once every 6 months, whatever it is. It's not a big ask. But basically, you know who it is. Just drop an email, remind them who you are, because they need to keep the finger on the pulse of their communities. Is it?
Yeah, and look, we've seen some dramatic turnarounds. Like, we've seen people like, and I will name well, I won't name the name, but there was a very, very senior Labor politician who had previously been opposed to duck hunting, came out while the Premier was away on holidays, came out and was very categorically clear about his support for safe, sustainable, responsible hunting. Now, if you had asked that same politician probably 18 months ago, you might have got a very, very different answer. But it's very clear where the government currently trends. And look, even if your local politician is a well-known anti-duck hunting supporter within Labor, i.e., Lily D'Ambrosio or Steve McGee out there at Melton, Yarraville, is it Kate, someone or other down there in Yarraville, Footscray, ring them up, ring their office, tell them you want to come in and have a meeting, tell them that you want to talk to them about fishing or you want to talk to them about roads or hospitals, and then when you get in there, start talking to them about hunting. That might be a very short conversation, but it will be a trigger and it will be a reminder to those politicians that, that they're there to serve you, not the other way around.
And they're quite used to doing this. I mean, they're not going to kick you out of their office, just because you want to go see them. They will make their position clear, and okay, you agree to disagree, but they've heard you. And to be perfectly blunt, if you don't do it, you are giving them a free pass to continue. But what it will, I guess, cause them to do is to relegate it as an issue for them. The hospitals and schools and all that, they'll bubble back up to the surface. So they might stay anti-duck hunting, but they'll learn to just be quiet about it because you'll upset, Danny who lives around the corner, sort of thing.
Correct. That's exactly right. We've got to start to make our voices heard over those people that oppose duck hunting. And let's not forget that, certain anti-hunting groups are very small, very, very small indeed. And they have a voice for, less than two handfuls of people. And so we've seen anti-hunting organisations come up with press releases and things like that, but they only speak for a very, very small quantity of people. So we've got to make sure that our voice is the dominant voice in the space. So we have to make sure that and all the hunting organisations should be doing a press release on a weekly basis. I know VDHA, we punched out some press releases straight after the announcement of the season, and we will continue to do so on key issues like closures, wounding reduction, action plans, and things like that. So that's where we need to be. We need to be strong. The press love free stories. So if you can write up a very good press release, or you can even write a local letter to your editor of your local magazine or paper, you might see it get published. And that's what we need to do as a whole hunting fraternity. We just need to get out there.
You also mentioned some difficulties in licensing that have arisen. What are those difficulties? How do they affect duck hunters?
So not so much difficulties in licensing, but changes. So changes this year for new duck hunters. So new duck hunters and new game license holders this year have to do some compulsory education modules, as well as the waterfowl identification testing goes online. So it's new this year. So this year one is just for all new game license holders, particularly for duck and quail. And then from next year, if your game license is due to be renewed next year, then existing game license holders have to do that process as well. So it would be a refresher wit test. It's not a pass or fail wit test like a new licensed hunter would be, but it's a refresher. And then you would also do a couple of modules. So there's an Indigenous awareness module, there's a hunting 101 module, then there's just another education on regulation modules and things like that. So for any tradies that are used to working on job sites and doing OH&S type stuff and work safe type stuff before going onto a job site via induction, whether it be via video or in person, it's very, very similar to that process. We are seeking some exemptions for elderly people, like people that have had a game license for forever, 30, 40, 50 years. And we will just see how we go. That we're just going to talk to the department a bit more about that one to see how that one fleshes out.
Okay, so promotion without notice. Obviously, being a duck hunter or any sort of hunter requires you can have access to a lot of information that the government puts out about what you can do, can't do, when, all those sort of things, especially with duck hunting. So the promotion is VDHA. These are some of the benefits of becoming a member, which is this is obviously your website, which includes public liability insurance. There's obviously a lot of information and updates that are put out. There are discounts available. I mean, there's an awful lot there that's available to anyone who is into duck hunting for $80 a year. That's nothing.
Yes, and our sponsorship guys, and in particular a fellow by the name Rod Farino, has been doing a spectacular job in bringing on board sponsors to VDHA in particular. We've got a cavalcade of sponsors and a list that is almost unbelievable. So for a very small $80 investment into your sport and becoming a member of VDHA, you can also pick up 10% discounts at places like JV Marine, Core Campers. We've got My Mates Outdoors at Melton have come on board. We've got Gun Emporium. We've got there's a whole stack of different sponsors here, there, and everywhere in amongst our list of key sponsors of the organisation. And we also have we've got some exciting sponsors we're doing some exciting things with some sponsors in terms of a major raffle for this year, which is exceptional, and we've got a lot of things that's coming in the future. But I think at the moment we're presently up to something like 15 or 20 key sponsors. We've got a kebab shop, we've got the wheel gallery if you want to go and buy new wheels and tires. We've got there's just the list is just massive. So and you can see all those on our Facebook page, and look, we also have regular updates of information on our Facebook page, our web page. We are concentrated purely on advocacy in VDHA, but we are looking at getting some base ground up sort of work being done in like some conservation projects, some nest boxing projects or nesting tube projects as well. So but mainly advocacy to represent you as a duck and quail hunter, not just duck but also quail. So we'll represent you at the highest levels of political parties in Victoria. So.
And here's some other numbers for those who may fall into those other categories as a pensioner or junior. So, $80 a year max. And I guess all you have to do, because we all know what shooters are like. We can be a bit of a stingy mob at times. Just think about how much you spend on what you do. And think about how much you haven't told your wife, and then $80 to protect what you do, to protect everything you've got, because as you know, if we don't have that advocacy, we're sunk. And for example, if that the inquiry had it gone south, then you wouldn't have another duck season. There would not be one on this year.
True. Yeah, we would have. We certainly would have been facing an uphill battle. We did get together some very good science and some organisations other than VDHA. Everyone contributed. The amount that people put in and the things that we managed to do in such a short space of time in that space was quite incredible. And here we are with we do have duck and quail hunting mapped out until 2034. And I said this the other night at in particular at our Sunshine event, where we had a huge quantity of juniors, both boys and girls, in our meeting there when we were doing our duck information night. And some of those it gladdens my heart to see that some of those kids that are 8 and 9 years old, that are only a couple of years away from going out in the field with their father, or their mother to go hunting will be doing so, and then we'll have another 6 years. So they will be going from, say, an 8 or 9 year old young child now, and at some point in time in the next 10 years, that's going to get them through to young adulthood. So they're going to have a whole upbringing of all their teenage years to get the opportunity to go hunting, not only with their father, but with their father's mates and with their more than likely grandparents. And we know how some of those strong family bonds are built in the hunting circles, and that pleases me greatly. It's probably one of the it's one of those little things that just matters so much that people sort of just keep forgetting. So I think that's terrific. So we spoke about the adaptive harvest model, and the adaptive harvest model is world leading science. So we have finally, and the Victorian government has, and this includes DECA and GMA and Arthur Island Institute and DJ which is where this was all being led from. We've now done away with the Eastern Area Waterbird Survey as a key contributor in the adaptive harvest model, and instead we plug in some of the key Victorian developed science, which is the Arthur Island Halidata counts. So a mean average, the same way as New South Wales DPI do their riverine accounts. I go into meetings and talk to the department and talk to politicians, and we know that the current GMA model that creates a wounding indice is exactly the same science. So if we want to compare one for one and apples for apples, the way Norman conducted his study is exactly the same way the GMA can conduct their study now. So they have a wounding rate stuck in this model at 23%, but the GMA's average wounding rate has come back as substantially lower than that, and is averaging around the 3.7, 3.8% over the last 3 years that they've done that. So we'll continue to keep an eye on those key inputs, because that will be vital going forwards. In a great year where we've got lots of water and lots of birds and lots of breeding, that's going to give us it's going to give us good, consistent results. But the proof in the pudding will be when we have a year where the birds are in New South Wales because they've had a massive rain event and flood event there, and it sucks the birds away. Because our Victorian birds they're not just Victorian birds, they're eastern seaboard birds, and they're also lake air birds, and our game birds move around spectacularly well. Other key points obviously coming up for this season, just for the wider hunter community. So there's big work to be done or not so much big work to be done, but keep a constant mind on wounding reduction. So shoot birds that are in your capability. I'm not going to be standing on a wetland looking over someone's shoulder and saying, hey, you shouldn't have shot at that one, or you should shoot at this one, or whatever, but be careful about what you're doing out there. Let's make sure that we're shooting birds in good ethical distances, and that the birds that are within your capability. We want to make sure we don't want to see wounded birds swimming around. We don't want to see people chasing wounded birds around. So if you've got a wounded bird in front of you and you've made sure your background is clear, like you see in every single American video on YouTube or whatever you may be watching, put a finishing shot on that bird. That takes away the poorer options in terms of retrieving a wounded bird and dispatching it. So pay attention to those type of things. We know that antis are out there looking for any little thing they can find on us at any point in time, and they will continue to take photos with high resolution, long range digital cameras. They will still do videos. They'll illegally fly drones over wetlands and all of those things. So people need to be aware of that, and we should be, when you're making your hunting plan and you're setting your decoys and doing all those good things, then just make sure that you're planning on making sure immediate retrieval, and make sure you minimise wounding. So there's some things we don't like about season arrangements. I know people aren't happy with Wednesdays. We're working on that for the game regs till 2034. That's what we've got. Minister can change those things, so we'll keep working with relevant ministers and see if we can get back to a better outcome as per our members' wishes. So, but all in all, a great season ahead of us. Really good bird numbers out there. Water is drying back a little bit, so make sure everyone should remind themselves of hunting etiquette. And we don't need to be standing on top of each other's toes while we're out there in wetlands, but there's still plenty of space there and plenty of birds.
Excellent. Go out and have fun. I mean, it's good season, so keep it going. And again, the going out there when the government counts numbers and they see how many people actually are engaged with this, that's something they also definitely take notice of as well. Cool.
Absolutely. Look, and if you're dealing with anyone in the press, we do have world leading science that's governing our season now. So, and look, and we're still going to be targeted. We'll be targeted by anti-hunting groups as usual, and Laurie will come out and do his usual 3 minutes next to the edge of a wetland and get himself arrested and try and get himself on the front page of the paper. Everyone should be aware that that's going to happen. Everyone should know that's going to happen. But let's just not give him anything. Let's just, our compliance rates in hunting are astonishingly good. There's, I always joke about how good our compliance rates are. But if you look at the compliance rates of hunting compared to other outdoor activities, the compliance rates for hunting are beyond compare. And even in an ABC interview I did a couple of weeks ago, I was asked, well, why do we need, surely we need more than however many GMA officers in the field, I'd said at the time, and my response was, well, if you've got a 99.3% compliance rate, then why would you need any more? It's not like when you're driving down the freeway, you have a police car every 5 kilometres just because someone gets caught speeding every 10 Ks, so it's a little bit of common sense required. But look, I guess the message is that it's our responsibility to look after our own sport and look after our own pastimes and our own outdoor recreation. So, irrespective of where you see duck hunting, if for you if it's outdoor recreation, sport, family time, we need to make sure we do so responsibly and make sure that we can keep doing it year after year after year.
Excellent. Danny Ryan from the Victorian Duck Hunters Association, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Neil.
Don't forget, $80 and you get all that information and more. So
jump on board, join the rest of the team.
Good man. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Gun News Australia. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and that you're on our email list. And don't forget to check the episode notes because that's where you'll find out how to support the show. We'll see you in the next episode of Gun News Australia, brought to you by Politics Reloaded.